Most people imagine spiritual awakening as a path of light, joy, and endless peace. But what if I told you the truest awakening is not always beautiful? What if it dismantles you, piece by piece, until you can no longer recognize the person you once were? If your path has felt heavier, stranger, and lonelier than anyone around you seems to understand, this message might be the mirror you've been searching for. 1. The breaking of identity. There comes a moment on this strange and silent path when the sense of who you are simply begins to fall apart. Not with noise or drama, but in a way that feels like the slow crumbling of a temple you once prayed. In every day, it is not the result of a disaster, nor the punishment for a mistake. It is the gentle but unstoppable pull of something deeper, something that whispers to you that the name you've been answering to, the story you've been telling yourself, was never the whole truth. You feel it first in small ways. A distance between you and your own reflection. A sudden hollowness when someone calls your name, as if they're calling out to an echo instead of a person. And then, almost without warning, it is as if you wake up in the home you've lived in for years, but every object feels foreign. The chairs do not carry your shape. The walls do not remember your touch. The photographs look like they belong to a stranger. It's unsettling at first to realize that the life you've built so carefully is no longer a fit for the soul you are becoming. And yet, somewhere deep inside, there's a quiet knowing that this is not the end. This is the reset, the clearing of the old so that something unshakably true can finally have room to grow. It is the moment the caterpillar stops crawling, not knowing yet what it means to fly, only that the old way is no longer possible. 2. The shedding of borrowed selves. There comes a time when the masks you've worn for so long begin to loosen, not with a sudden tearing, but with the slow, almost tender unraveling of something that was never truly yours to begin with. Mask you wore to please your family, the smile that hid your fatigue, the nods that agreed with words you never believed. They start to feel heavier than the truth you've been hiding underneath. The mask you wore for friends. The easy laughter, the effortless charm, the way you fit yourself into their stories, just so you wouldn't be left behind. It begins to crumble in your hands like old paper that can no longer hold its shape. And perhaps the hardest to face is ease. The mask you wore for yourself. The one that convinced you that if you just kept going, kept proving, kept building, one day you'd finally feel whole. You begin to see that the soul is never cruel in its work. It does not rip away what you are not. It simply reveals it, gently, like sunlight melting the frost to show the green beneath. But honesty has its own gravity. And once it starts, it will draw away every false layer you've been carrying. Every borrowed identity that cannot survive the weight of your truth. The process is quiet, but it moves with the inevitability of the tide, washing away all that is not yours, returning you again and again to the shoreline of your own being. And you find that you cannot stop it, not because you are weak, but because you are finally strong enough to let it happen, strong enough to walk home to yourself, even if the road feels empty at first. 3. The 0-point state. And then, almost without warning, there comes the stillness. The kind of stillness that doesn't arrive with silence alone, but with the deep, cellular pause of a soul that has laid down every weapon it didn't know it was carrying. The nervous system, once addicted to tension and urgency, no longer twitches at the smallest noise, no longer leaps at the thought of what must be done. There is instead a strange, steady neutrality, as if the body has remembered what it's like to simply exist. You find there is no more fight left. No restless chase through the dark. No frantic climb toward a peak that vanishes the moment you think you've reached it. There is no desperate reach for what's next. No grasping for the next answer. the next sign, the next miracle. You begin to understand that the absence of reaching is not emptiness, but a fullness too quiet to name. It's not that you have stopped caring. Your heart still feels, your eyes still see. But the caring is no longer tangled with fear, no longer shackled to the belief that you must control the river for it to carry you home. You realize you are being rebuilt from zero, not as a punishment, but as the only way to build a life that is not a copy of someone else's story. From here, from this still and unshakable center, the life that truly belongs to you begins to grow, not with noise, but with the quiet certainty of a seed that knows exactly when to break open. And though the world may look at you and see nothing happening, inside, the foundation is forming. The kind that will not collapse when the storms return. The kind that will carry you for the rest of your life. 4. Emotions as pure energy. You begin to notice something subtle, almost imperceptible at first. The way your emotions start to shift, not in the quick, jagged bursts they once had, but in slow, fluid waves that seem to carry more than just a story. Sadness, for so long a heavy word in your mind, is no longer just sadness. It becomes a soft movement in your chest, like the slow tide pulling inward, asking nothing of you except to be felt. You realize it is not an enemy to escape, nor a weight to cast off. It is simply an energy moving through, like wind passing through the trees, leaving them swaying but not broken. And anger, once a sharp label that burned hot with judgment, becomes simply heat. A quick, bright flare that passes through your body like lightning, illuminating everything for just a moment, before it dissolves. Without the names, without the stories, they begin to lose the walls that kept them trapped, and what's left is movement. Pure, unfiltered, alive. You begin to feel them as they truly are. Vibrations, currents, tides. Neither good nor bad, neither to be feared nor clung to, only to be witnessed as they rise, crest, and fall away again. And in this way, you start to see that every feeling is just another way life touches you, another reminder that you are not separate from the vast, breathing movement of the universe. 5. The disillusionment with spiritual persona. You might notice slowly at first and then all at once that the idea of being a spiritual person begins to lose its grip on you. The allure of looking enlightened, of being seen as awakened, no longer tastes as sweet as it once did. The titles you once wore, like medals, teacher, seeker, healer, suddenly feel heavy, like costumes that no longer fit the body you've grown into. The image you once worked so carefully to maintain in the eyes of others begins to dissolve, like paint washing away in the rain, leaving behind something bare and unadorned. The applause, the nods of approval, the unspoken belonging to a certain tribe. You find yourself not craving them anymore, because somewhere inside you know that truth does not need witnesses to exist. Instead, what you long for now is raw, unpolished, unfiltered life. The moments that are not framed for an audience, the truths that are not wrapped in gentle words to make them easier to swallow. You yearn for conversations that don't require masks, silences that don't need to be filled, for a way of living that feels more like breathing than performing. And yes, this shift can feel lonely at first. Lonely not because you are abandoned, but because you have stepped out of the echo chamber, where everyone agrees to see the world the same way. But it is a sacred loneliness, one that clears the space for truth to enter, one that makes the air lighter, the sky wider, and your soul more able to hear the sound of its own voice. 6. Becoming energetically invisible. One day, without drama, without a fight, without any farewell, you begin to notice that some people simply stop noticing you. Not because you vanish from the world, but because your presence no longer echoes in the chambers they live in. It can feel strange at first. This quiet erasure, like being in a room full of voices where you suddenly makes no sound. But if you listen deeper, you will feel the gentleness in it. This is not rejection. It is protection, a silent mercy that moves you away from energies that would have drained you, from connections that would have asked you to keep playing a role you've already outgrown. Your path is no longer about being seen, or being understood, or being celebrated. It is about moving where your soul is called, even if that means traveling through spaces where no one calls your name. When your frequency changes, when your inner world shifts to a higher, cleaner note, you disappear from the maps of those who cannot meet you where you are going. Like a bird flying beyond the horizon of someone's sight. And in that disappearance, there is a kind of freedom you never knew before. The freedom to grow without being pulled back. The freedom to walk without explaining where you are going. The freedom to simply be. You realize then that invisibility is not emptiness. It is spaciousness. A vast clearing where your next chapter can take root without interference, without noise, without the weight of old eyes watching. 7. Living fully in the present, and somewhere along the way, without you even realizing the exact moment it happened, your mind stops its endless sprint into the future, stops its restless rewinding into the past, as if it has finally grown tired of running in circles. You begin to notice that life no longer feels like a constant chase for something just beyond your reach. No longer a race where you keep looking over your shoulder or straining your eyes toward the next finish line. The noise inside quiets, the calculations soften, and the need to measure, predict, or bargain with time falls away. Like laying down a heavy bag you didn't realize you've been carrying. Life stops being about chasing outcomes, about trying to force the river to flow faster, about pulling flowers open before they are ready to bloom. You start to exist in the exact moment you're living, and it feels almost like stepping into a secret room that was always here, hidden beneath all the noise. Quiet, alive, and complete. And in this room, there is no clock, no scoreboard, no rush. Only the rhythm of your breath and the subtle unfolding of what is right in front of you. Untied from the need to control, you find yourself strangely free. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because you no longer need to wrestle it into the shape you once thought it had to be. And in that freedom, you discover something you have been missing all along. The quiet miracle of simply being. Here, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this unrepeatable moment. If these words felt like they were describing the secret life you've been living, the inner landscape you rarely speak of, the quiet storms and tender breakthroughs that happen, far from anyone's eyes, then please know this truth. It takes an extraordinary soul to walk through this kind of awakening. Extraordinary not because you are louder or stronger than others, but because you have chosen to keep walking through the fire instead of turning away, to keep facing the mirror even when it shows you what you'd rather not see. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are not lost. You are shedding the maps that only led you back to places you no longer belong. Every step you've taken, every layer you've released, has been a movement toward the truth of yourself, even on the days when it felt like you were dissolving into nothing. And if you feel called, I would love to hear your story. Not the polished version, but the real one, the one that still trembles a little when you tell it. Share it below, and know that somewhere out there, someone might be waiting for the very sentence you are afraid to say. And if you wish to keep walking this path together, you are welcome to stay close, to subscribe, to return when your soul needs these reminders. This journey is not about adding more. It is about becoming less, layer by layer, until all that remains is the unshakable, quiet truth of who you have always been.